Hey y'all, welcome to Paige's Perspective, where I help you find your inner strength to cope with life. I want to talk about something that gets misunderstood over and over again. Betrayal versus codependency. When most people hear betrayal, they picture cheating. But betrayal is a whole lot bigger than that. It can be financial. It can be constant lying or leaving out things that you have a right to know about. It can be emotional. And if addiction is involved, it can be the broken promises, the secrets, the times they chose the substance over you or your family. There's a lot that goes into this, and I'm going to get into it on this episode. But betrayal is anything that shatters safety, trust, and intimacy. And here's the thing. When you've been betrayed, your reactions aren't crazy. They're normal responses to having the ground ripped out from under you. Which is why I hate when betrayed partners get slapped with the codependent label. It's lazy, it's inaccurate, and it shifts the spotlight off the person who actually caused the harm. It invalidates your pain by treating your reaction as a flaw instead of a wound. It blames you for the dynamic instead of holding the betrayer accountable. And it adds shame to a place that's already hurting. You know, betrayal trauma is not codependency. Your brain and body are in survival mode, scanning for safety, trying to piece reality back together, and that's not being controlling. That's being a human being. If you've been betrayed, the goal isn't to fix some imaginary flaw in you. It's to process the trauma, rebuild your sense of safety, and decide what you want for your life from here, while your betrayer takes ownership for the damage they caused. You deserve compassion, understanding, and support, not a label that minimizes your pain or paints you as the problem. Let's get into some examples of betrayal trauma. Betrayal in a relationship takes many forms and has devastating effects on trust, intimacy, and emotional safety. So there's infidelity. We all know about that one. You know, the emotional affairs, sharing deep emotional intimacy with someone outside the relationship, the physical affairs, engaging in sexual acts with someone else, online betrayal, sexting, using dating apps, or subscribing to explicit content creators. And then there's financial betrayal, secret spending or debt, hiding bank accounts, gambling, or withholding financial details, making unilateral decisions about shared resources without consent. You know, in our relationship, Matt spent a lot of our money on drugs and alcohol, which I didn't know about. He lied about it. He told me he was buying other things or whatever. So it was a double whammy of betrayal trauma, the lies and then the loss of the funds. So there's financial and then the lies. Let's get into the lies and deception. You know, chronic dishonesty about day-to-day activities or major life events. So saying they're working late when they're actually drinking or using or maybe meeting up with people tied to their addiction. I mean, it could just be that they're saying that they're working late and they're really not. They're off doing something else. That is a form of betrayal. Lying about where they've been, who they've been with, or how they spent money. Creating false stories about why they missed family events, work, or important commitments. Another one under lies and deception is going to be manipulating the truth to avoid accountability. Admitting to part of the truth, but leaving out the most damaging details so it sounds severe. You know, like, yeah, I had a drink, but it was just one, when it was an all-night binge. Reframing their actions so you feel unreasonable for being upset. You know, I only used because you were stressing me out. Changing timelines or stories so evidence no longer lines up, making you doubt your memory or instincts. There's also withholding information a partner has a right to know. You know, hiding relapses. You have a right to know. Ongoing use, debts, any type of risky behavior, not telling you about legal trouble, health issues, or dangerous situations they've been in because of their addiction, keeping secret contact with people who enable or participate in their substance use. Betrayal or emotional trust, gaslighting. We hear that all the time. Making a partner doubt their reality or perceptions. Like, here's a scenario. Let's say that you notice cash missing from your joint account and you confront your partner suspecting they spent it on a substance. Here's the gaslighting response. They'll say, "You're imagining things. You're always paranoid. I told you I used that money to pay a bill. You just forgot." They may even fabricate proof, like a fake receipt, or claim they already told you about the expense. And then over time, this makes you second guess your memory, instincts, and judgment, even when you have clear evidence something isn't right. This happened in our relationship. We've talked about it before, where he actually went into my toll tag account and deleted a toll that I specifically saw moments before, and he went in there and deleted it and say, I wasn't over there. You must be, losing your mind. That will harm a person. That's whenever it's like, okay, well, I don't know what's real anymore because I don't really have that proof. Then there's breaking confidentiality by sharing private details with others. Let's say you open up about your fears, your frustrations, your feelings, or something that's deeply personal. Maybe your own mental health struggles or your feelings about the relationship, and your partner later uses that information in a conversation with their friends, family, or even people connected to their using. They may share your private confessions while venting to drinking buddies or using friends. Telling family members intimate details about your fights, about your mental health or finances, framing you as the problem to get sympathy. Maybe they bring up something you told them in confidence during an argument to embarrass or undermine you. In these relationships, this often happens when the addicted partner is trying to deflect attention from their own behavior, build an alliance with others who will support their version of events, and punish you for holding them accountable by making you look bad. And failing to support a partner during crucial moments or crises. For example, you're going through a medical emergency, a family loss. Maybe something in your life is very stressful. And instead of showing up for you, they disappear into their addiction. And this might look like skipping your surgery or important appointments because they were drinking high or even just recovering from a binge. Maybe leaving you to handle a family crisis alone while they escape into whatever it is they're using, being physically present but emotionally absent. So too intoxicated, distracted, or just self-focused to offer comfort or help. Creating more chaos during your crisis. Maybe starting fights, spending money recklessly. Maybe they get into legal trouble. In these relationships, these moments cut especially deep because they highlight that the addiction consistently takes priority over your needs. Or I should say that their needs take constant priority over your needs, or their wants, even in your most vulnerable times. Some addiction-related betrayals would be like hiding or lying about substance use, relapsing, or behaviors, promising to quit harmful habits, but continuing them secretly. I see that all the time. They're promising to quit, but then they continue to do it without even saying anything. That is going to cause betrayal trauma. Prioritizing addiction over the relationship or family, missing birthdays, holidays, or special events to get drunk or even recover. Spending family money on substances or other activities instead of bills, savings, or, your shared goals. They putting themselves in risky situations for the sake of getting high, knowing it jeopardizes your safety, security, or emotional, well-being. And then there's the disrespecting of boundaries. Violating agreed upon boundaries about relationships, communication, or privacy, refusing to honor requests for space or time to heal, showing up uninvited at your home, work, your social events, even after you've asked for distance. Maybe they are constantly calling you, sending you multiple texts or social media messages, even emails, despite you requesting no contact for a set period. Pushing for reconciliation before you've processed the betrayal or decided what you even want. This is not okay. Them disrespecting your boundaries is a form of betrayal. Overstepping limits on personal information or social interactions, telling friends and family or mutual acquaintances intimate details you ask them to keep private. Maybe involving your children or relatives in conversations about your relationship issues without your consent. Posting about you or the relationship on social media against your wishes. Betrayal trauma happens when someone you rely on for safety, love, and trust becomes the source of harm. There is shattered safety in these relationships. Your partner is supposed to be a safe place. But their secrecy, their lies, their broken promises make the world unpredictable, and you can't trust what they say when they'll show up or how they're going to behave, which is going to keep your nervous system on high alert 24/7. It's natural. It's a natural body reaction for what we do. There's loss of reality anchors, the gaslighting, the minimizing, the manipulation. It's going to chip away at your sense of what's real. And then you start questioning your own memory, your own perception, and even your own sanity. And not because you're overreacting, but because you've created an environment where truth is not where you've created, where they have created an environment where truth is unstable. Then there's erosion of self-worth. When they repeatedly choose the substance over you or the family, it can feel like you're not worth showing up for. And that perceived rejection is going to burrow deep, especially when it's not a one-time event, but a pattern over years. And then there's forced hypervigilance. You become the detector. You scan their tone, their body language, and routines to figure out if they're using or lying. This isn't being controlling. It's your brain trying to survive in an unsafe environment. It turns you into somebody that you do not recognize, but it is a human reaction. It is not codependency. The traditional codependency label pathologizes your survival instincts. You're not addicted to the addict. You're responding to real, ongoing breaches of trust. You're not controlling. You're trying to create safety in an unsafe environment. You're not enmeshed. You're dealing with a situation where their actions directly impact your emotional, physical, and financial security. Calling it codependency is like telling someone whose partner keeps running red lights that they're overly focused on traffic safety. It ignores the fact that the danger is real and caused by someone else's choices. So it can be damaging to label betrayed partners as codependent because it shifts the focus away from the harm done to them and instead places unwarranted blame on their response to betrayal. I was watching a documentary recently it was on Netflix called I Just Killed My Dad, where there was a woman who worked with domestic violence cases, and she made a comment. It was something along the lines of, as a society, we need to stop asking why people stay in abusive situations and start asking why people abuse. Something like that. And it hit because it's true. We're also focused on our side of the street, that it almost negates the abuse, which is scary as hell to think about. So here's why the narrative of codependency may be harmful in these situations. It invalidates their pain. Betrayal, trauma, it's traumatizing. Betrayal is traumatizing. Labeling a partner as codependent ignores the real harm caused by the betrayer and minimizes their pain and emotional turmoil. It dismisses the betrayed partner's response as dysfunctional rather than a natural reaction to being hurt. It can be victim blaming. Codependency implies that the betrayed person has contributed to the unhealthy dynamic or sought control over the betrayer, which is rarely the case in betrayal trauma. This shifts accountability away from the betrayer, who is responsible for their actions, onto the person who is already wounded. It can create shame. Betrayed partners are often already struggling with feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and fear. Being called codependent compounds their shame and discourages healthy self-advocacy. It implies that their attempts to save or repair the relationship were misguided, rather than recognizing the genuine love and commitment they offered. It misrepresents the reality of betrayal trauma. Betrayal trauma isn't the same as codependency. Betrayed partners experience physiological and psychological symptoms due to broken trust, often akin to PTSD. Codependency frameworks can overlook the distinct experience of betrayal trauma, where survival mechanisms like hypervigilance are adaptive, not pathological. It obscures the path to healing. True healing in a relationship requires the betrayer to take accountability, and for the betrayed partner to process their trauma and rebuild their sense of safety and self-worth. Labeling someone as codependent redirects focus to fixing their supposed flaws instead of addressing the betrayal and its consequences. We designed an online program with a licensed therapist that helps the healing process. We help you find your voice again, set boundaries, make decisions that align with your values, build up your self-esteem. And yes, we talk a bit about codependency, but it's only a small part of what you may be dealing with. We validate your experiences and emotions, acknowledge the deep wounds caused by betrayal and the effort it takes to rebuild. We emphasize empowerment and not blame. We encourage betrayed partners to reclaim their autonomy and establish boundaries without shaming them for their initial responses. It's a self-paced program, and you get a weekly support call with us and others going through it, and you can get 75% off at independentlystrong.com using code Wheelie75. The recovery world needs to stop treating partners as sick simply because they've been harmed and start training professionals and peer groups to recognize betrayal trauma symptoms, removing shame-based language like you're part of the problem and replacing it with what happened to you is real and here's how you're going to heal from it. Making space for justified anger, grief, and boundary setting without framing it as dysfunction, centering partner safety, not the addict's comfort. There's a lot of changes that need to happen within the world, and I'm trying really hard to get this out there. And we're trying to change it one podcast at a time. I hope this episode helps you feel less alone and not a big part of the problem. You know, we're human with natural human reactions when we know we're being mistreated, and that's not a flaw. It's natural. You know, we help empower you to take your life back and recognize what is going on in your home. We got you. That is all I have for this week. Until next time, I'm Paige. Bye.